The sound of the slap echoed through the store like a thunderclap, freezing everyone in place. James Wilson, a 38-year-old single father of two, stood stunned, his cheek burning red as he clutched his daughter's small hand. The store manager, Diane Mercer, glared at him with contempt, her palms still tingling from the impact. What happened in the next 2 minutes would change the lives of everyone in that store forever. If you've ever witnessed injustice and wondered if karma really exists, this story will answer that question. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to see more incredible true stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. James had been struggling since his wife's death 3 years ago. Cancer took her quickly, leaving him alone to raise their daughters, Emma, 7, and Lily, 5. He worked 2 jobs, morning shifts at a warehouse and evenings as a freelance graphic designer, just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Sleep was a luxury he rarely enjoyed, but his daughter's smiles made every exhausting day worthwhile. That Saturday morning had started like any other. James had promised the girls a small treat if they behaved during their weekly grocery shopping trip. Emma wanted a new coloring book, while Lily had her heart set on a stuffed unicorn she'd spotted in the toy section of Mercer's supermarket the previous week. "Daddy, can we look at the unicorn now?" "You promised." Lily tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with anticipation. James checked his watch. They had 15 minutes before he needed to drop the girls at his sister-in-law's house for his warehouse shift. "Okay, sweetheart. Just a quick look." The toy aisle was empty except for a teenage employee restocking shelves. Lily spotted the unicorn immediately, a fluffy white creature with a rainbow mane and sparkly horn. The price tag made James wince, but he'd been saving a little extra from his design work. Seeing Lily's face light up as she hugged the toy made the sacrifice worthwhile. As they approached the checkout, James noticed a commotion. Diane Mercer, the store manager, was berating an elderly cashier whose hands trembled as she tried to fix a register error. "How many times do I have to tell you to call me before you make these mistakes?" Diane's voice carried across the store. "This is coming out of your paycheck." The old woman's eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry, Ms. Mercer. My arthritis is acting up today." James felt a surge of discomfort. He'd seen Diane's behavior before. She had a reputation for treating employees harshly, but he usually kept his head down, too busy with his own struggles to get involved. When their turn came, the elderly cashier, whose name tag read Martha, smiled warmly at the girls despite her red-rimmed eyes. "What a beautiful unicorn," she said to Lily, who beamed in response. Martha's arthritic fingers moved slowly over the register keys. James noticed Diane watching from nearby, tapping her foot impatiently. When Martha accidentally scanned the unicorn twice, Diane stormed over. "For God's sake, Martha. Can't you do anything right?" She roughly pushed Martha aside and voided the transaction. "It's really not a problem," James said quietly. "We're not in a rush." Diane shot him a cold look. "Mind your own business. I'm handling this." Emma, always sensitive to tension, pressed against James's side. "Daddy, why is that lady being mean?" Diane's head snapped toward Emma. "Your father should teach you not to comment on adult matters, little girl." James felt his face flush. "Please don't speak to my daughter that way." "I'll speak however I want in my store," Diane retorted, her voice rising. "And I suggest you teach your children some manners." Lily began to cry, clutching her unicorn tighter. James knelt to comfort her, aware of other customers watching the scene unfold. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered, wiping her tears. "We'll be done soon." When he stood, Diane was glaring at him. "Control your children or leave." "They're not doing anything wrong," James said, struggling to keep his voice level. "You're the one causing a scene." "Excuse me?" Diane stepped closer, her face contorted with anger. "You heard me. The way you treat your employees is unacceptable." Martha was doing her best. Martha looked terrified, her eyes darting between them. Other employees had stopped working to watch, and customers stood frozen in the checkout lines. "You have no idea how to run a business," Diane hissed. "Some of us work for a living instead of parading our sob stories around for sympathy." James felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "What's that supposed to mean?" Diane smirked. "Everyone knows you're the widower with the sad little girls. Don't think that entitles you to special treatment." The store fell completely silent. James could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. "We've never asked for special treatment. Just basic human decency." "Decency?" Diane laughed coldly. "Like bringing your children to disrupt my store? Teaching them to question authority?" "Teaching them to stand up to bullies," James corrected. What happened next occurred so quickly that witnesses later gave conflicting accounts. Diane's face turned purple with rage. She stepped forward, raised her hand, and slapped James hard across the face. The sound cracked through the silent store. Emma screamed. Lily dropped her unicorn. James stood frozen, his cheeks stinging, too shocked to react. Martha gasped. "Ms. Mercer." Diane seemed momentarily stunned by her own action, then quickly recovered. "He provoked me," she announced to the stunned onlookers. Everyone saw it. James touched his cheek, feeling a strange calm descend over him. He looked down at his daughter's frightened faces, then at Martha's horrified expression, and finally at the other employees who stood watching with a mixture of fear and resignation that suggested this wasn't the first time they'd witnessed Diane's cruelty. "Girls," he said quietly, "pick up the unicorn. We're leaving." "That's right," Diane sneered. "Run away." James turned to her. "I'm not running. I'm choosing not to subject my daughters to more of your behavior." He pulled out his phone. "But I am calling the police to report an assault." Diane's smug expression faltered. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." James dialed, maintaining eye contact with Diane as he reported the incident. What James didn't know, what none of them knew, was that among the witnesses was Robert Mercer, Diane's father and the actual owner of the supermarket chain. He had been conducting an unannounced visit, dressed in casual clothes, observing store operations from the perspective of a regular customer. He had watched the entire incident unfold from the magazine aisle. As James finished his call, a distinguished older man stepped forward from the crowd. "That won't be necessary, sir," he said, his voice carrying authority despite its gentleness. "I believe I can resolve this situation more efficiently." Diane's face drained of color. "Dad? What are you doing here?" Robert Mercer ignored his daughter, focusing instead on James and the girls. "I apologize profoundly for what you've experienced today. Please, would you and your daughters join me in the office? I'd like to make this right." James hesitated, looking down at his frightened children. "I appreciate that, but my daughters are upset, and I need to get them home." Robert nodded understandingly. "Of course. Perhaps I could visit you later today? Or you could come to my office downtown when it's convenient." Before James could respond, Diane stepped forward. "Dad, you don't understand. This man was interfering with how I discipline my employees. He..." Silence. Robert's voice was quiet but carried such authority that Diane immediately stopped speaking. "I've seen enough, Diane. I've been watching for 20 minutes. He turned to address the store at large. "May I have everyone's attention, please? My name is Robert Mercer. I founded this supermarket chain 30 years ago. What I witnessed today is completely contrary to the values upon which I built this business." The store had gone completely silent again. Even the children seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. "First," Robert continued, "I want to apologize to this gentleman and his daughters." He gestured toward James. "The behavior you experienced today is inexcusable. He then turned to Martha. "And to you, ma'am, and all the employees who have suffered under similar treatment, I offer my deepest regrets. This ends today." Robert faced his daughter, his expression a mixture of disappointment and resolve. "Diane, you're fired, effective immediately. Please remove your personal belongings and leave the premises." Diane's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. Over one little incident?" "This is clearly not one incident," Robert replied. "The reactions of your staff tell me everything I need to know about your management style. I've received complaints, but I refuse to believe my daughter could behave this way. I was wrong." Diane's face contorted with rage. "You're choosing strangers over your own daughter?" "I'm choosing the values this company was built on," Robert corrected. "And I'm choosing to believe that somewhere inside you is the daughter I raised, who would be ashamed of her behavior today." He turned to a stunned assistant manager who had been watching from nearby. "Kevin, please escort Diane out after she collects her things. Then gather all staff for an emergency meeting in 15 minutes. Kevin nodded, still looking shocked. "Yes, sir." Diane stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. "Dad, you can't do this. This is my store. I've worked here for 12 years. And in those years, you've forgotten the most important lesson I tried to teach you: treat people with dignity, whether they work for you, with you, or are your customers." Robert's voice was sad but firm. "You have 2 minutes to leave voluntarily before I call security." The next 2 minutes passed in tense silence. Diane looked around at the faces watching her, employees who couldn't meet her eyes, customers who stared openly, and her father whose expression remained resolute. Finally, she ripped off her name badge, threw it on the floor, and stormed toward the office to collect her belongings. Robert turned back to James, who stood protectively with an arm around each daughter. "Sir, I cannot adequately express my regret for what happened here today. Please allow me to make it right." James shook his head. "I don't want anything. I just wanted to be treated with respect, and for your employees to be treated the same way. And they will be, from this day forward," Robert promised. "But please, take my card. If there's ever anything you need, don't hesitate to call me directly." James accepted the card, noticing the title, Robert Mercer, Founder and CEO. "Thank you," James said simply. Robert knelt down to the girl's level. "I'm very sorry about what happened today. Your daddy was very brave to stand up for what's right." Emma nodded solemnly. "Our mommy used to say that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're scared." Robert's eyes softened. "Your mommy sounds like she was very wise." "She's in heaven now," Lily informed him, clutching her unicorn. "But she watches over us." "I'm sure she does," Robert said gently. "And I bet she's very proud of all of you today." He stood and addressed James again. "The unicorn is on the house, of course. And please, come back. I promise things will be different." As James led his daughters out of the store, they passed Kevin escorting a stone-faced Diane toward the exit. She refused to look at them. Outside in the parking lot, James knelt down and gathered his daughters in a tight hug. "Are you both okay?" Emma nodded against his shoulder. "Are you okay, Daddy? That lady hit you." "I'm fine, sweetheart," James assured her. "Sometimes adults make bad choices when they're angry, but that doesn't make it right." "Is she in big trouble?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. "Yes, she is," James said honestly. "But the important thing is that we stood up for what's right, just like Mommy taught us." As they drove away, James glanced in the rearview mirror at his daughters. Emma was explaining something to Lily, her small hands gesturing emphatically while Lily nodded, clutching her unicorn. Despite the shock of the incident, James felt an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time since losing his wife, he felt certain he was teaching his daughters the values she would have wanted them to learn. What James couldn't have known was that Robert Mercer's promise to change things wasn't just empty words. By the end of that day, Diane wasn't the only one who had been fired. Robert had conducted individual interviews with every employee and discovered a pattern of abusive behavior that had been ongoing for years. 3 assistant managers who had enabled Diane's behavior or mimicked it were also terminated. Martha, the elderly cashier, was offered a less physically demanding role as a greeter with the same pay. Kevin, who had always tried to buffer the staff from Diane's worst behavior, was promoted to interim manager while Robert searched for a permanent replacement. 2 weeks later, James received an unexpected call from Robert Mercer. "Mr. Wilson, I hope I'm not disturbing you," Robert said when James answered. "Not at all. And please, call me James." "James, then. I'm calling because I've been doing a lot of thinking since that day in the store. The way you stood up for Martha and the other employees, even at personal cost to yourself, showed me something rare these days: true character." James wasn't sure how to respond. "I just did what anyone would do." "But that's just it," Robert countered. "Most people wouldn't. They'd keep their heads down, avoid conflict, protect themselves first. You protected others." There was a pause before Robert continued. "I've been looking for a new manager for that location. Someone who understands that a business is about more than just profits, it's about people. Would you be interested in discussing the position?" James was stunned. "Mr. Mercer, I appreciate the offer, but I don't have any retail management experience." "You have life experience," Robert replied. "And character. The rest can be taught. Think about it, please. The hours would be regular, the pay substantially better than what you're making at the warehouse, and there would be full benefits for you and your daughters." The mention of benefits made James pause. Emma needed orthodontic work they couldn't afford, and he'd been putting off his own medical checkups to save money. "Could I think about it?" James asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need." After careful consideration and discussions with his sister-in-law, James accepted the position. Robert personally trained him for the first month, teaching him the business aspects while James brought his own natural empathy and work ethic to the role. 6 months later, the store's profits had increased by 15%, employee turnover had dropped to nearly zero, and customer satisfaction scores were the highest in the chain. James had implemented flexible scheduling for parents, created a mentorship program for new employees, and established a food donation program for local families in need. On the anniversary of that fateful day, Robert visited the store again. This time, he wasn't in disguise. He watched with pride as James moved through the aisles, greeting customers by name, helping an elderly shopper reach a high shelf, and patiently training a new teenage cashier. Martha, now the beloved store greeter, spotted Robert first. "Mr. Mercer. So good to see you again." James looked up from where he was helping a young mother with twins load groceries into her cart. He excused himself and came to greet Robert with a warm handshake. "The place looks fantastic," Robert said, looking around at the bustling but orderly store. "And the numbers speak for themselves." James smiled modestly. "It's a team effort. We've got great people here." "They've got a great leader," Robert countered. "Which is why I'm here today. I'd like to offer you a promotion to regional manager. You'd oversee 5 stores, implement your training methods across the region, and help me identify other potential managers with your values." James was speechless for a moment. "I'm honored, but my daughters would still be your priority," Robert assured him. "The position comes with flexible hours and the ability to work from home when needed. I've learned a lot from you this past year, James. Family comes first. Always." As they discussed the details, Lily and Emma burst through the front doors, having been dropped off by their aunt after school. They ran to James, chattering excitedly about their day. "Girls, you remember Mr. Mercer?" James said, putting an arm around each daughter. "The unicorn man. Lily exclaimed, making both men laugh. Emma, now 8 and more perceptive, studied Robert carefully. "You're the man who made things right when that mean lady hit Daddy." Robert nodded solemnly. "I tried to. Your daddy did the hard part by standing up."